So I was born or I was raised, and I still live in Upper Darby. It's not exactly. Yeah, it's here for Upper Darby. It's not exactly a big city. I always thought that I grew up in the suburbs. I thought I grew up in the suburbs, but it wasn't until I came out here, around this area, that I realized that, a lot of people see like the western suburbs as just like an extension of the city, right? And I grew up by the Tower Theater that Jim mentioned. I live in I could walk to the city from my house. So I guess, so this story sort of takes place on the outskirts of the city. But I mean, one thing that I think about when I think of Metropolis is I think of crime, and we already heard some stories about crime. So this is a story about sort of the beginning of my life in crime. I was, as a lot of criminals, I started young. I was in, this story takes place, I was in 8th grade. So it was like 14 or something. And I was walking home from middle school, Beverly Hills. I don't know, from Upper Darby, yeah. So we were walking home from school, and it was me, and it was my twin brother, Matt, and my friend Pat Woods, and my friend Pete. And this is an important detail to the story, is my friend Pete, it was and still is a very large Vietnamese person. And he, like at the time, I don't know if you remember Street Fighter, the video game Street Fighter. So he kind of looked like E. Honda from Street Fighter, or Yokozuna from WWF Wrestling. So he looked like a sumo wrestler, very so that might not be important, clear why that's important to the story at first, but it is. So we were walking home from school, and we got to an alleyway that we were cutting through, and we found like an electric wheelchair in the alleyway. And it was in the back of like a lawyer's office or something, and it was covered over with some cardboard boxes. And we took the boxes off, and I figured, oh, it's in the trash, right? We all figured it's in the trash, and I sat down in this wheelchair, and it had like a control, and I sat down in it, and I moved it, and it started moving around, and we were like, oh, wow, very cool. And we were like driving this wheelchair around in an alley, and we figured, oh, well, why would someone throw this out? This is great. So then we drove it home, and my friend Pete, my very large friend, he sat down in the chair, and my brother like stood up on the back of it, and we rode it home, and we were like driving it all around. We drove it around Sears parking lot there, and we took it home, and we got it back to my house, and it was a big wheelchair. It was wide, and we tried to put it into my the back door of my basement, and which is a little narrower, right? So it was hard to get it in, and we kind of like scuffed it up. I don't know, we might have damaged it a little, but my neighbor, who's a very nosy person, he's an older guy, he helped us do it, right? So we forced this thing in. It got a little messed up, and then it was around in my basement for like a couple weeks, and we were like driving it around my basement, and then we eventually started to sort of lose power, and we got kind of bored about it, and we forgot about it. Well, it was like a couple weeks went by, and I was getting ready to go to school, to leave for school one morning, and we got a phone call. It was like 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning. And it was my brother, my older brother, Roy. He was going to work, and he stopped at Wawa, and he got the Daily Times, the Delaware County Daily Times. And he saw an article in the paper, and it was, my life hasn't been the same ever since someone stole my electric wheelchair. And it was like this tragic story about this woman who said she was like, her whole life was up, it was just, her whole life was in an upheaval. And I never realized this, but apparently those things are pretty expensive. They're worth like thousands of dollars. So there was a reward for this wheelchair. And it was like $200 or whatever. But my mother's on the phone and she's hearing the story. She's like, "You're dead. You're dead." So she figures we have to turn this in, right? We have to turn in the wheelchair. But here's the thing. You guys didn't find it in the alley. So my mother's a bit of a criminal, too. She said, "You found it someplace else." We said we found it in Sears parking lot, and we gave it back, and the police came, and they brought it, and they put it in the back of a car, and they took it, and there was a follow-up story in the newspaper about the wheelchair being reclaimed, and these hero kids who found it. But they were describing the story, and they said it was the wheelchair was a bit damaged, you know, because we had to jam it in the door, and it said whoever took it, just to be malicious, like destroyed this wheelchair, and they said the seat, particularly the seat, was sunken in, as if a tremendous weight had been placed upon it. So yeah, that's a story about a life in crime. So
great story.